What's good, everybody? It's your boy Tommy Elden, and today we're going to be trying to beat Elden only using whips. Huddle up, I'm going to break this down like I'm Bill Belichick. So there's 6 different whips in Elden and I've heard that they're trash. So naturally, I want to try them out and see if I can beat the game with them. So today, I'm going to attempt all 15 remembrance bosses, obtain all of the whips, and beat Radahn's ass. I have to get my get back after that man violated me in the DLC. Okay, without further ado, let's get started. So all good runs start with a good name, and Whoopi Goldberg felt fitting for this run. I waltzed into Limgrave and immediately immersed in the gameplay, as I'm reminded I get absolutely no play right off the bat. But fuck it, we ball, and I go ahead and scoop a fresh new car. Now it's time to get our first weapon, so I take a trip to New York to get our basic whip, but I don't have the stats to be able to use it yet. So I open this chest to get teleported directly to Newark, New Jersey, and while I'm here, I'll grab half the Dectus medallion for later and Radagon Sword Seal, as this is going to bump up a bunch of my stats so that I can use the whip now. I never used the whip before, so I wanted to test it out before we fought any real bosses, and man, this thing does dick for damage. The range is pretty good, and it staggers some enemies, I guess, so that's pretty cool. But if this is anything to go off of, the late fights in this run are going to be extremely long. So buckle in, it's going to be a long ride. Before we fight Margit, I went ahead and grabbed my physic flask and went down to Weeping Peninsula to fight this wannabe airbender to get the Opaline bubble tier. This is going to allow me to take one free hit, and in my opinion, it's the most OP bubble tier in the base game. Now I go ahead and fight Margit, who is the first real boss of this run. I walked in with a lot of confidence because I've beaten Elden Ring a couple of times in the past, and I actually almost beat him on my first attempt. But I was quickly reminded that this game is hard as fuck and will punish you for any mistakes you make. I always was getting greedy because the whip has low damage and a slow attack, and I'm a little greedy bastard. But eventually, I stayed patient and kept baiting out his big hammer attack and the move where he starts trying to 360 no-scope you, because you can always get a couple of free hits after you dodge. And he goes down relatively easily. I guess I should explain why I'm just walking around showing ass everywhere, and it's because if you have a low equip load in this game, you get more iframes, which basically means it's easier to dodge attacks, but because I'm not wearing any armor, if I do get hit, I take a lot of damage. But I'm a slut for light rolling, so I'm going to be walking around double cheeked up for most of this run. Now we just go up to our boy, ask him to open up the main gate, where we just waltzed straight through Stormville Castle, no issues whatsoever, didn't get hit a single time, all the way until we got to Godric. Now it's time to fight the fraud, Mr. Put the Great Rune in the Bag, Godric. My strategy for this fight is to just stay right in front of him, but at the edge of his range so I can easily roll his combos. He loves to do his whirlwind attack, which is very easy to dodge, and even though I kept fucking it up and being too far away, when he does throw the wind at you, or whatever the hell he's doing, it's still easy to dodge. Another move he loves is the ground slam attack, where he smacks the ground twice, and if you time it right, you get a nice jumping attack on the second one, which is very nice because my whip is still giving Riley Reid a run for her money with how much dick it's sucking. Phase 2 is even easier in my opinion because he always starts with the big flamethrower move where you just run right under his armpit and get a nice couple licks in. Most of his moves are very similar to the first phase, but now he's just shooting fire everywhere, which isn't very hard to dodge. And one change is the ground attack, which now has 3 hits instead of 2, but it's still slow enough that you can react and get that jumping hit in at the end. Overall, he's a very easy fight and probably the second easiest remembrance boss. Now that we have access to Liurnia, we can start to upgrade our weapon and grab the second whip of the game, which is in Caria Manor. Along the way, I performed this crazy new skip where you just jump off the map and respawn directly in front of Caria Manor. Now that we have two whips, you might be thinking that this is going to get much easier now, but you would be wrong. I got straight ass in my left hand and big booty in my right hand like I'm Johnny Sins. Seriously though, these things need to be upgraded because they're still trash. While we're here, we take out the boss of the area so that we can go see our girl Ronnie, and we have to complete her quest line to be able to fight some of the remembrance bosses later, and that's definitely the only reason why I want to talk to her. After I zip my jeans back up, we head on over to this crystal boss to get the bell bearing so we can now upgrade our whips to +6, which should hopefully make them a little bit better. And with our fresh new upgraded whips, it's time to go through Hogwarts, and our first obstacle is the big ginger dog, who looks like the Walmart version of Sif from Dark Souls 1. However, this time, the dog is extremely fast and loves to use magic and jumping attacks, which can kill you very easily. Luckily, he does not have that much health, and you can almost always get a hit in after dodging his jumping sword attacks, which makes this fight not too difficult, and we can make our way up to Ronnie's mother, Valana. The first phase of this fight is always easy, and I found that you know how difficult the rest of the fight is going to be based on how many times you have to knock her down in this phase. This run was taking between 3 to 4 times on different attempts, but I was able to kill her in 3 knockdowns on this attempt. The only thing that you have to look out for are the random chandeliers that fall on you and insta-kill you, but besides that, the first phase is easy enough. The second phase, however, is pretty difficult, and I was struggling because she loves to spam spells, and it can be tricky if you give her too much space. Eventually, I found that charging her as much as possible was way better than being passive. Most of the time, you can get a jumping attack to stagger her and stun lock her for a little bit. I actually managed to get a stagger on her on this attempt, but you can't do riposte with the whips, which kinda blows. Once she gets to half health in the second phase, she starts spamming summons. The dogs are the only ones that are easily killable, so for all the other summons, I would just bravely run away until they despawned. Eventually, after getting a couple more jumping attacks, she falls and we get our second remembrance. I finally got tired of looking at my guy's cakes all the time, so I decided to get some drip, and the Clean Rot Knight armor set is some of the coolest armor in my opinion. The problem is that to get the armor, I have to kill a bunch of Clean Rot Knights and hope that one of them drops something. These knights are pretty strong given my current stats, and the fact that they're on a swamp of scarlet rot does not help at all. But I tried grinding for their armor for around 2 hours, but I was getting the shit kicked out of me, and I only managed to make it out of there with the helmet, which was enough for me after being manhandled for 2 hours. I want to go fight Radahn next, but first I have to go to Altus Plateau to start the Radahn Festival. I could just grab the other half of the Dectus Medallion to make it to Altus Plateau the normal way, but I have generational beef with this magma worm. This man violated the fuck out of me on my first playthrough, so I feel obligated to whip this man up and remind him that I'm not the one to play with. While we're in Altus, I also grabbed the second bell bearing to upgrade my whips to +12 before we go fight Radahn. Now it's time to play the game. This is what I've been waiting for. I walked into Radahn's arena ready to give him a good old-fashioned passionate ass whooping, but that man must look at me the way Aaron Rodgers looked at the Bears. He straight owns me. Eventually though, after around 4 hours of getting my shoes, coat, and hat taken, I started to figure out most of his moves. I was consistently getting him into his second phase, and my game plan was to stay as close as possible to him so he wouldn't use any of his gravity magic bullshit. The problem with this fight is Radahn's combos, his weird timings, and his aggressiveness. His spinning 4-hit combo was what I was most confident in dodging, and I could always get at least one hit in after that. So I would just stand in front of him and wait for him to pull that move out so I could get some hits in. Whenever he starts running away, I immediately start riding Torrent, pause, because it's the best way I found to dodge the wave of magic that's going to come out after he slams the ground. Besides that though, I really just dodged around waiting for an opening in between his combos, and eventually, with enough patience and persistence, I was able to evict this man who lives rent-free in my head. After fighting Radahn for hours, I just needed to see one go through, and I thought there's no one else better than Bambi to lift my spirits up. I don't got much to say about this man. He has like 3 moves, and they are all pretty telegraphed and easy to dodge. Did this feel like bullying? Yes. Would I do it again? Absolutely. Sometimes you gotta make a layup to get your rhythm going. Before I leave the underground, I scoop the Fingerslayer blade to progress Ronnie's questline. The next whip that I could get is the Magma Whip Candlestick, and Patches gives it to you after you complete his questline. First, we have to spare him in this cave, talk to him a few times, get sucked up by this thing in Raya Lucaria Academy, which teleports you to Volcano Manor, and then you have to tank this Spartan kick off of a cliff. After that, we join Volcano Manor, complete the first assassination request, and then Patches should be in the manor and give you an assassination request of his own, and as reward for doing that, he gives you the whip. But for some reason, Patches would not show up in the manor. I don't know if I fucked up his quest line or what, but I looked for him for a while and just could not find him and eventually just gave up. I then decided to give Rykard a shot while we're already here, and we are not doing that right now. I'm doing far too little damage, and it would be a struggle to even get him into his second phase. So instead, I head up to Draco Malfoy, who was giving me a decent amount of trouble. Some of his moves one-shot me, which is not cool at all, and the timing on his swings really kept fucking me up. Eventually though, I figured out that you can roll in during his fireballs to get a quick attack if you are right underneath them, and then quickly roll back, as you have just enough time to get out of there before he shoots at his feet. Also, I found that attacking him on his shield side is much easier, as his shield attacks are slower, easier to read, and do less damage than his weapon. Towards the end of his fight, I started having a panic attack and was tweaking out, but after recollecting myself and baiting out a couple more shield attacks, I was able to defeat him and waltz into the royal capital. Waiting for us at the top of the capital is Margit Part 2, except this time he has Damascus camo from Modern Warfare on his sword. Maybe I'm just ass at the game, but I swear I've fought this man so many times and there are just no openings if you are close to him. He reminds me of Pontiff from Dark Souls 3, where his combos just keep going as long as you are in his range. This fight was 10 minutes long because there are just so few times that you can safely do any damage, and if I'm not using an OP weapon or a silly spellcaster, this fight is very difficult. Luckily, he does a similar jumping attack from the first time that you fight him that is easily dodgeable, and you can get in behind him and get 2 free hits. Besides that though, the only other move I found that you can safely get a hit in is when he tries to hit you from the side, pause, but if you dodge to the right the moment that he swings, you can get a free hit because he will always follow up with a slow swing that gives you just enough time to be able to dodge. With that in mind, my game plan was to stay at a medium range and try to bait out one of those 2 moves while dodging all of his projectiles. This of course took a while, and I would start to lose patience and go in to get a swing every now and then, and get slapped in my face like Chris Rock at the Oscars. Eventually though, we get into phase 2, and I try to get a few swings in while he's transforming, but I almost died to the stupid geyser things that spawn around him randomly. In phase 2, most of his moves are very similar, and there are actually a couple more moves that I could take advantage of. One is his grab attack, where his sword turns red and he does an uppercut. The other move is exactly the same as the first time you fight him, where he spins around twice. However, he is very aggressive in the second phase, and sometimes he will just keep spamming with projectiles. I was having trouble dodging his thrust attack for whatever reason, and I found that dodging to the right is much easier than dodging to the left. So almost every time I tried dodging to the left, he would still hit me somehow. And with all that, my game plan for phase 2 was to stay at a medium range and bait out those 4 attacks to try and get hits in. Another thing in phase 2 is that random geysers pop up around the arena, and they actually almost hit me multiple times on this attempt. Finally though, after baiting out enough attacks, we kill Morgott and make him bite the curb in 4K. After getting that out of my system, we can go to the mountaintop and pick up the 3rd Bell Baron, which makes all of our whips plus 18 now. And there's actually another whip that we can get here, but it's a 2% drop from this fat sack of shit enemy. I'm not exaggerating when I say that I fought this guy over and over again for 3 hours before he finally dropped it. I killed him enough times to get his entire armor set twice before he finally dropped it, and each piece of armor has the same chance of dropping as the whip, so I just got extremely unlucky. Eventually though, we get the Thorn Whip, and it actually had bleed on it, which reminded me of Ashes of War, so I went back to Caelid to fight this knight, who drops the Bloodhound Step Ash of War, and I put it on the Arumi with the Blood Affinity. So now I have 2 plus 18 whips with bleed on them, which should actually make them pretty decent. Who better to try these new whips out on than the Fire Giant? My strategy is always to just get right up underneath this big man and smack the shit out of his legs. I was actually surprised that the whips were doing a decent amount of damage to him, and after enough hits to the ankle, he looks like 2018 Kevin Durant when he tore his Achilles. Shout out Kawhi, is this the dagger, Leonard? Anyway, when you're underneath him, he will normally do one of two moves. He will either roll away from you or do the big slam attack, which is easy to time as you just gotta dodge as soon as his foot starts coming down. This is the move I was generally waiting for, as you can get in a nice couple of hits in before he attacks again. Once you do enough damage to him, he starts using fire and spawning fireballs that explode when they are close to you. I like running towards these fireballs and getting them out of the way as soon as possible. I couldn't manage to get a bleed proc in the first phase because he just wouldn't stop being a roly-poly, and I couldn't get a lot of hits in at once. I normally try not to lock my camera too much during this fight because you have to make sure that there's no fireballs around you, and if he's about to roll into you, because that's normally a one-shot if it hits. I actually managed to no-hit his first phase, which is pretty cool, but I immediately sold it, being greedy on the first attack of his second phase. In the second phase, he rips off one of his legs, which sucks for us because that's where we were doing most of our damage, and his weak spots are now his hands and the third eye that grows on his chest. The only way that we can hit the eye is if we get a stagger, but we can't get enough consecutive attacks for that to happen. Now we could hit his hands, but standing in front of him is much more dangerous than being underneath him, so that's basically ruled out too. And you may be thinking that this will be easier because he can't move around too much now that he's missing a leg, right? No. This man's mastery of the gator roll makes Luke Kuechly look like a bum. He rolls around like crazy in this phase, which is super annoying and makes this fight take a very long time. Also, he starts spamming fire in the second phase and even has a flamethrower move that comes out of the mouth on his stomach, and I can never dodge it consistently. I just panic roll and pray it doesn't hit me. I mainly just try to stay on his hip like I'm trying to force a fumble and attack his thighs as much as possible. And although I don't do much damage to him in this phase, I do manage to get a bleed proc, and after a couple of close calls, we pull out the W and prove once and for all that size doesn't matter. Next, we make Future proud by ditching our side piece and sacrificing her for our own ambition, and make our way up to the uncircumcised duo. I always try to focus the fat one in this fight because he has a lot of openings and gives you time to get hits in between his moves. If you stay pretty close to him, you can kinda get him to keep hitting the ground, and you can normally get a jumping attack in after each attack. Because we're hitting him pretty consistently, we manage to bleed him, which is all we really need to get him into his second phase. He always starts his second phase with his patented rolling meatball technique, which if you stand behind one of the columns, you can get him stuck and just tee off with attacks and almost kill him. And after dodging a few more of his attacks, we take him out and immediately try talking to the skinny friend before Godzilla comes back and executes a Marshall Yonda-esque blocking performance. I managed to get enough hits to get him to his second phase before he respawns Jabba the Hutt, but I can never really find safe times to hit the skinny Godskin when he's in his second phase. I mainly just wait for him to throw a fireball or to do his big jumping slam attack to try and get a hit in. One move I know I can take advantage of though is when he does his helicopter blade move and spins his blade at you, and if you dodge through that, you can get a couple of hits in on his body. After trading blows with this man enough times, we take him down and are finally able to run ones with Bubble Bass. One on one, this fight is very easy, like I was saying, as he has a lot of openings, so I'm able to get him into his second phase before Pinhead comes back, and after that, like Shaq says, it's barbecue chicken from there. This fight is definitely difficult no matter what, unless you do like the sleep potion cheese, but it's not the fun type of difficult like Melania or Malekith, but more of an annoying difficult. Most of the difficulty comes from fighting two people at once because alone, both of these fights are pretty easy. Because of this, the fight is more positioning based, as you have to try and get one away from the other to focus one at a time. But once you start attacking one of them, the other one will just start throwing fireballs at you because he feels left out. So you have to constantly keep both of the enemies on your screen or you're gonna get snuck. After defeating them though, we get the Bell Bearing 4, which allows us to upgrade our whips to plus 24, which is great because our next opponent is Malekith. Malekith, aka Mr. Put That Shit On, is my favorite fight in the game because he looks sick as fuck, he's very aggressive, he has openings, but if you make mistakes, he punishes you for it. This is the complete opposite of the last fight because it's difficult, but the fun type of difficult. First though, we have to beat his first phase, which isn't too bad. And there's three main moves here that I'm looking for that I know I can take advantage of. The first one is where he puts his hand in the dirt and throws the slash at you. By rolling forward, you can get a hit in and get out safely most of the time. The next move is where he scoops a boulder up from the ground and throws it at you. The long wait time when he throws it at you lets you run right at him and get a running hit in every single time. And also, the move where he slashes behind him and then brings that shit around town like he's SpongeBob is slow and lets you get an attack in. If you're too far away, he likes to either run up on you or spam projectiles, so I try to stay right at the edge of his range to be able to run at him if he tries to throw the boulder at me. This first phase is easy and it's all about just being patient, so I just baited out these three attacks long enough, and after being patient, we make it to his second phase, where he throws on some Rick Owens and almost drowns me with his new drip. He's got a lot of moves in the second phase, but I've found it's best to stay as close as possible to him. This allows me to take advantage of his normal swings to get attacks in, and when he does the crazy circle slash shit, I still have enough time to get behind him to dodge it. When he jumps on his sword, he's always going to do a backflip if you're kind of behind him, so you can predict where he's going to land and get a hit in as he's landing for free, and still be able to dodge his next move. Another reason why I love the light roll is specifically for this fight, because you have to dodge quickly and multiple times in a row. For example, his double spinning slash, I have trouble dodging when I have a medium roll, but I can dodge it pretty consistently with the light roll. I got a bleed proc that had his health super low, which made me incredibly greedy, and I jumped in and got my shit rocked. If this was a different fight, I would have broke my monitor, but because I love this fight, I wasn't too upset, and came in a few tries later and was able to beat this dog like Mike Vick. Before I take on the last two bosses of the game, there are a couple of optional bosses I have to clean up, so I'm just gonna montage me whipping these bosses like I'm Salento from 2015, so enjoy. Alright, you can't tell me that beat wasn't hard as fuck. But anyway, it's time to finish the game, and first on the list is Lil Gideon, who thinks he's the main character and starts spitting a villain monologue, but this ain't an anime show, so I shut his ass up and just hit the shit out of him. Because the whips stagger him, it's extremely easy even though he gets a couple heals off. He bleeds pretty easily, and on top of the staggers, it's basically just an R1 simulator until he falls, and we can move on to the real final bosses. Godfrey, the first Elden Lord, is next on the list, and to be honest, this was the fight I was worried about the most because of his second phase. His first phase though is pretty easy because it's the same thing as the first time you fight him earlier in the capital, and the reason why I say that his first phase is pretty easy is because his second phase has given me so much trouble that I've fought him so many times, so I know his first phase pretty well by now. I generally wait for his 3-hit combo to swing or his big overhand swing. The timing of the whips did take me a little while to figure out when I can and can't swing, but my game plan was to get a jumping hit in whenever he would run up on me and smash the ground, and then get another hit in after his combo. This worked well, and then I was able to get another couple of hits in when he starts emoting and does that big smash on the ground. And besides that, I just dodge a few more of his combos, get a couple hits in, and it's off to the second phase. For his second phase, he turns into prime John Cena mixed with John Jones, and just starts acting a fool with all different types of grabs, slams, and kicks. The reason why I have such a hard time with this fight is because I can never figure out which move he's about to do, and his one leg sweep is so fast I can never react in time. So I don't have a real strategy for this fight because his moves are so unpredictable for me, but I try to bait out his slow grab moves to get a hit in, or just run away helplessly until I see an opening. On this run though, I don't know if it was the Holy Spirit that got into me or what, but I was moving flawlessly. Shit had me feeling like LeBron Game 6 against the Celtics on the Miami Heat. I was just trying shit. I actually had a no-hit going for his second phase, but sold it by eating a kick to the mouth. But I was able to get a bleed at the end and I finished him off. Pause. I'm very surprised with how this fight turned out, and I thought I was going to have to grind for like 4 hours to beat this man, but I managed to do it without too much trouble. Now all we have left in the game is the final boss. Before that, there's one more whip left in the game that I can get, and I have to do a Volcano Manor request and kill this whip dude to get it. This whipmaster was actually nice as fuck with it, and we were having a bloodhound step off for a little while, but I managed to kill him and get the last whip in the game. And I tried it out for a little while, but I didn't really like it, so I just went back to the old whips that I was using anyway. I know that I'm saying that there's only one more boss left, despite me only killing 13 of the 15 remembrance bosses so far, and that is because the only other one is Rykard, who is bullshit for challenge runs because he's a gimmick boss. Now I know that you can kill him without the weapon that's in the arena, but it is so much harder, and I managed to get him to his second phase a bunch of times, but the fact that he's just sitting in a pool of lava that staggers you every second is so annoying, and I tried this fight for a while, but eventually gave up because it is not fun at all, and I moved on to the final boss. Alright, now it's time to meet the boss and pay the cost. I walked into the Radagon fight with some confidence, thinking I was going to beat him fairly easily, but he was doing me like Kyrie did Brandon Knight in the 2013 Rising Stars game. Eventually, I got into a good rhythm and was able to find a couple of spots to attack him, which were mainly his holy attacks. These are much bigger swings that leave openings afterwards that allow me to get hits off on him. There's one quick stab move he does that is hard to dodge, but luckily he didn't use it in the first phase, and he starts to pull out his big 3 holy smash move to start phase 2. I learned that you can roll forward and hit him 2 times in between his second and third smash, and quickly dodge into him to dodge his final smash. Doing this lets me get a good amount of damage off on him while he's transitioning like Caitlyn Jenner. After that, even though we have him low health, he starts spazzing out and it's much harder to find times to hit him. He just starts throwing shit and teleporting all over the map, which can be very overwhelming, but once I get back in his range, he starts using his regular combos again, and I'm able to defeat him and move on to Mr. Beast. This fight is awesome, but it also sucks. I love the atmosphere and the aesthetic of this whole fight, but parts of the boss are incredibly annoying. Mainly how the Elden Beast swims around everywhere and runs across the entire map
and just makes you chase him the entire time. We ain't playing tag, bitch. Why am I chasing you around like it's third grade recess? Let's fight. Anyway, the strategy for the beginning is always the same as he's going to use his flamethrower move. You run up on him, get a full 3 swings, then get behind him and try to attack him once or twice before he runs. His moves in the beginning aren't that hard to dodge, and I'm hoping for his basic swing combos. This is where he does those 3 big swings, which are very telegraphed and easy to dodge. And after that combo, you can always get in like 2 or 3 hits, but he normally just starts swimming away again and makes you run another 3 miles to be able to attack him. This fight got me feeling like David Goggins with how much running you have to do. I thought because you can use your horse here now, it would make this fight much easier, but I tried the horse and I would always end up getting hit by some of his projectiles because it wouldn't let me get off in time to react, so I mainly stayed away from using them. The one move I would use the horse for is Elden Stars, because that move is OP as shit. The man spawns like a million stars that are homing and follow you for what feels like 2 full minutes. Towards the end of the fight, I was feeling good, but then this man had me pinned in the corner of an invisible wall and almost killed me with 2 different moves. But luckily, I was able to get away from the fire while it scorched my leg hair off. And with my freshly shaven legs, I jumped in to get some damage and almost died again because he decided to use a nuke and I somehow panic rolled my way out of there. After those close calls, I was a little nervous but managed to calm down, dodge his final few slashes, and take Boyo down. All that's left for us is to call our wife and let her do what she's gotta do. But yeah, we just beat Elden Ring only using whips. Overall, I would rate the difficulty of this challenge as 6 out of 10 because the whips were very bad in the beginning, but after upgrading them and putting bleed on them, it made them much better and actually kind of viable. I have a couple of plans for much harder challenges in the future. If anyone's still watching this, I would greatly appreciate it if you left a comment. Let me know what you think of the video, how I could improve, any challenges you think I should do in the future. But anyways, I appreciate anyone who watched this, and I should hopefully be dropping the next challenge run in a week. Peace out.